the philosophical approach that we're taking to this is not just a gotcha, right? It's how do we educate folks on what we're doing and why it's important and how they can fix it.
Fixing the fundamentals of government websites. It all begins with acknowledging we have a problem. And boy howdy, do we have a problem. A new report gives half of all states a failing grade. That would be an F. It is back to basics as we put the future of the citizen experience with government in context.
TFIC takes you deeper into the stories that are shaping the future of state and local government.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
You're not Buzz Lightyear.
I'm Siri.
And I'm Google.
And I am Alexa.
Alexa seems so smart. I think we'd have a lot to talk about.
Pew, pew.
From government technology and governing, this is The Future in Context. With Ashley Silver, I'm Paul Taylor.
It is Report Card Day for government websites. The new report card, called ScanGov, covers all 50 states and federal government. We are not talking about grades for the web equivalent of AP Physics. Instead, the open source project focuses on the fundamentals, the basics. In school, we call them the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. In digital government, evaluating the basics gives you an at-a-glance view of how sites are doing on transparency, domain credibility or trust, accessibility, and crawlability. ScanGov monitors and scores sites based on their metadata, URL configurations, sitemaps, and robots.txt policies. The 50-state assessment debuted on May 14th. There were a half dozen states that earned an A grade: California, Hawaii, Virginia, Idaho, Iowa, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. But at the risk of burying our lead, the average grade across the state and federal websites was a solid F. Ouch. Paul talked to the civic hackers who created GovScan.
We are joined by America's favorite father-son civic hacking team, Elias and Luke Fretwell. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Hi. Hey, Paul. Thanks for having us.
Elias, when we last talked to you, it was about work that you were doing when you were all of 14 years old. How old are you now, and what have you been doing since then?
I'll be 16 in a few weeks, and we've started a new project relating to government websites.
What's it called, and what does it do?
It's called ScanGov, and it looks at some basic web practices for government websites, and it'll score them based on how well they're doing and what they have and don't have.
What all does it measure?
It measures their meta tags, which tell search engines and social media sites what to display when displaying information for that site, and data for their URL configuration, making sure everything is secure and it's easy to get to, and the domain is a .gov, so it's official. It also scores on the sitemap file, which lists all the pages underneath the website, and that helps search engines understand what's on the site. And last is the robots policy, which tells search engines where to look in the website and what parts to not put in search. And that's important because if a government site is excluding stuff, people can't find information they need.
Very good. Luke, let's bring you into the conversation. Every management text I've ever read says that what gets measured gets done. Based on what you're measuring, are you trying to influence behavioral change among public agencies?
Yeah, 100%, right? Like, I believe that we're all public servants, and each of us play a different role in that. So we can get paid by taxpayers and be sort of an official public servant, or we can do, sort of civic hacker things outside of the walls of bureaucracy and give what I call the bureaucratic nudge to inspire folks internally to do the right thing. That's what we've been working on. And there's a kind of a philosophical approach to what we're doing and how we do it. Yeah, I mean, it's just really being very intentional about it, and how we can communicate what we're doing and educate folks inside of government 100%. It's a very intentional project trying to impress upon government what they should be, what folks should be looking at, and acting on that.
As we speak, release one is about a week old. Elias gave us a good overview of what it's monitoring now. What else might it monitor as it matures?
We're building a product, and we realized that we could standardize kind of how the product looked. And then once we kind of learned about metadata and presented it in a way that we felt was compelling to folks inside of government, with the report cards, the scoring, and translating that to kind of the non-technical person, we realized there were other elements. So like Elias said, there's a site map, there's robots, there's a URL configuration that we believe is a proper government URL configuration or domain configuration. We didn't think that we would be mapping to site maps and robots and URLs. So we've very much taken an iterative approach to it, whether it's feedback, and people are giving us feedback in our GitHub repo on things like schema.org validation and sustainability. Are these websites hosted on sustainable servers? And then there's some other metrics that we've been looking at around accessibility. Things continue to pop up, and we continue to learn about new indicators that we can add to provide some sort of insight into how well government is performing on those.
Just on one of those dimensions, the URL, will jurisdictions get credit or full credit for anything other than a .gov domain?
Go ahead,
They have
Les.
a .edu or a .mil. Those will also count the same as a .gov would, but anything like a .com or .net will not count.
Just to kind of top level, literally, there's what's called the top level domain, right? So TLD. And then there's what's called the STLD, which is the sponsored top level domain. And there are certain organizations that can issue top level domains, STLDs. So, for example, the government is the only one that issues the .gov, and I believe the .mil. I think the Department of Defense issues the .mil. So what that does is validates, this is an official website. It has been validated by the U.S. government to be a government organization that is an official government agency or municipality. And this is something that I've tried to teach Elias, is sort of like taking a philosophical approach to civic hacking and product development in general, is having an opinion, right? And our opinion is, especially in this age of disinformation, governments must have a .gov website. When we go to a website and we are trained to know that we are on an official website, we go to a .gov, we know that it is an official domain. So what we have decided is that every official government entity should have a .gov.
ScanGov is very young. What have you heard, if anything, by way of feedback from public agencies?
What we're hearing is really positive for the most part. We have heard, without naming names, we've heard from folks at, the highest levels of government, not the highest, but fairly high up in the technology community at the federal government level, thanking us for the work that we're doing and shining a light on, where folks could improve. And I know that it has just having talked firsthand with folks, it has inspired folks internally to think about this more proactively and take it more seriously. It's designated in an OMB circular, some of these things. So I think it was a little bit of a shock for folks to see that they weren't adhering to kind of what an executive order or a law, the IDEA Act, is asking them to do, and they're not doing it. So we're kind of exposing that they need to improve on that.
Okay, but once exposed, how do people fix it?
If you see that you have a metadata score of an F, we have links to our metadata documentation that explains what metadata is, why it's important, and a little bit of a deep dive and, information about like how to fix it. And so we do that for all those things. So recognizing that people don't know what they don't know, instead of just a gotcha, we are doing it in a very constructive way so that we can put it into context, right? I think the thing that we've heard the most on the negative component of it is folks don't like the scorecard. We feel that's important because it's a very human-centered design approach to explaining to whether it's the general public or people who aren't familiar with the technical aspects of it, where they stand. And that's very important. Folks are a little bit squeamish about seeing the F's and the D's and the C's even. But it's just something that we felt like was important to help folks translate into it. But we've also been very, very proactive in educating folks. And because of that, it's not just we gotcha, you guys suck. This is what we're validating, and this is where you stand on it in a very human-centered design way. And this is what you need to know about it, and this is what you can do. Because of that tone, that approach, I think that it's been very positive overall. And like I said, it's reached, folks inside of DC, within the federal government technology community, and they've personally reached out and thanked me for the work.
In past years, in past decades, doing something like that involved a lot of human intervention. This automated or semi-automated approach that you've got going, does it appear to be complete and objective to the folks that are receiving those letter grades that we'll talk about in just a minute or two?
I think people have some questions about, what we're doing and why. There is a sense that we're not being whimsical about how we're doing it. And I think with the approach that we're taking with, the design, the simplicity of it, making it objective, not making it, sort of feel over the top, but also the documentation as well. I think general presentation of it and how we're showing up as a product, I think people are just sort of like, this is objective, this is informative, this is very helpful to us. And Elias can speak to how governments are submitting requests for us to update their data because they've in fact fixed the issues on their website.
Elias, let's bring you back in to do exactly that. And I think that goes to the behavioral change that we were talking about earlier. What are you hearing, Elias?
We've gotten a lot of people submitting requests on GitHub to update their score. They've made the changes to fix what they're missing, and they say, can you update it? And we do it, and the whole thing will come back up. So we've had a lot of people submit those, federal and state governments.
In what categories is the most activity in terms of those updates?
We've done the metadata the longest, so I think that's been the most.
So let's talk about grades, the report cards. You can do the big reveal. Letter grade by letter grade, what have we got in terms of the number of states? And let's focus on the states that got each of the big letters that matter on a report card.
There's only 2 states that have all of the things we're looking for. That's California and Virginia. And then there's 4 more states that have A's: Idaho, Iowa, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. So that's 6 out of 50 who have an A, and everyone else has something lower for that. And the average score for all the states is a 59%.
So the average grade would be a big letter
F.
If that was your report card, Elias, what kind of reception would you get when you got home?
I think I would probably not be able to use my computer for a while. I'd probably have to do my homework right when I got home and spend more time talking to my teachers.
So, Luke, you mentioned that this isn't a gotcha exercise. It's more an educational exercise. And there's 24 states that got a letter F.
Mm-hmm.
How should this data, how should these results be used by states? And also, as importantly, how should they not be used by states?
States should be looking at this. There's a technical aspect to the web. I think that the government digital service movement has really focused on the aesthetic component. The design systems. How does the website look to the end user? How does what are the colors? What are the fonts? Are they all the same? Does every website from a government organization look the same? Is a user experience fluid? But we're in the business of civic tech and government technology. This is our industry, right? And folks who are implementing government digital service should be delivering the technical components with just as much energy and focus as they are the aesthetic components. Because where we are right now is we haven't taken the technical components as serious as we should be. And we think it's very important for states to use this as a litmus test to determine how well they're taking the technical components seriously, because these are basic. Like, all of these things could be taken care of in a few days, but it's almost revealing that they're not doing the basics. So it makes you wonder, how are they going to do AI? How are they going to do the complicated technical things if they're not doing the basics?
Legislators, they only know how to do two things: praise or punish.
Mm-hmm.
With 24 Fs, is punishment the right approach, or is there something else to be done if you're a low performer?
I would say if you're a legislator, it's important for you to ask the questions around, do we have a digital service? Do we have a team of people that are focused specifically on the government digital experience that's separate from PR, communications, IT, somebody who's focusing on digital service holistically for the state or the county or a federal agency? And if you don't have that, then you need to start figuring out how you fund it and how you organize the bureaucratic system to have those digital service teams. And then I think you need to, once you have those digital services teams in place, you can really start to hold them accountable for these things. But I think what we're seeing right now is, especially with the state websites, a lot of them have been outsourced. So, folks internally really don't know what they don't know. They don't have anybody sort of leading it as a product owner or a digital service team, or they're not doing it at all. They're outsourcing it to IT, and it's just, they're taking kind of a piecemeal approach to it. So I would say, whether you're the executive or you're a legislator, it's important to rethink how you're delivering government services online and changing them from, we're just going to have a website and we're going to throw all this stuff up, but really thinking about it from, we are going to treat this as a service, and we are going to have a team and somebody in charge of it that is going to be held accountable to doing what needs to be done to make it uniform and fluid for the public.
Half of all states getting an F is a hard truth. Technically speaking, you didn't make the grade. Subversively, is this a political document if politics is the way that things get done?
Everything in this day and age can be interpreted as political. And, if you want to make it political, then make it political. But these things need to be fixed. We're just putting the facts out there, and we're providing information on how government can implement those things properly. Like I've always said to Elias, your product has to have an opinion. This is our opinion. It's might be a political opinion, but it's an opinion that is based in technology and how technology can be implemented properly to better serve the people. But I think the way that we've been doing it has allowed us some level of grace from the folks high up.
Give us a URL for people who need to check this out.
It's just scangov.gov. government.org.
Very good. Appreciate it. Thank you, Elias.
Thank you.
And thank you, Luke.
Thank you, Paul.
Luke and Elias Fretwell are a father-son civic hacking team from the Bay Area. And Elias, a principal investigator on this project, is all of 15 years old. The episode in which we first meet Elias, then 14, shows up a little earlier in your feed from July of last year. We've got links to it and to ScanGov in the show notes at tfic.tech. A bad report card does not a crisis make. It is not time for recriminations. It's time to get the stick on the ice and fix things that should have been fixed a long time ago. The editorial and production team behind TFIC includes Theo Douglas, Zoe Manzanetti, and Kaylee Tedrow. Our executive editor is Noel Nell. Our editors-in-chief are Dustina Heisler and Kathleen Robinette.
Next time on The Future in Context, Zena, Zoe, and I will put the future of TikTok in context on Government A to Z. And we've got some expert help. The TikTok dilemma goes to the heart of why we do Government A to Z. It is a nearly perfect use case for our generational take on the intersection of government, technology, and society. You won't want to miss it. Subscribe for free on Apple, Odyssey, Audible, Spotify, and YouTube.
And that will do it for us this time around. For Ashley Silver, I'm Paul Taylor. Thanks for listening. Take care.